this introductory session for today, we're definitely going to take the approach that more so from the perspective of a newer member, perhaps haven't had a chance to jump into Matrix just yet, point you in the right direction so you have a solid footing on that one. So we will start with this screen here and accessing Matrix in general. We'll also talk about the landing page and where you end up right after you log in, where we're going to talk about the widgets. From there, since there are a couple of things to do on your end, such as updating your profile information, maybe you even want to set up a bit of like a profile photo. So I've kind of put some stuff there on my desktop that we're going to work through. We'll go ahead and add that on so you know exactly how that information gets shared to realtor.ca, all that type of stuff. Once that's finished up and you have updated your information, from there, that's where we're going to start getting into actual searches. Okay, so we will talk about the wildcard feature when it comes to searches, different places where you could run searches on Matrix, and then we'll actually run one together. We'll do a really basic residential one, making use of the map. Jump into the different listing displays because you're going to see a whole bunch of listings come through. So we'll talk about how you can change the way that looks and manipulate it a little bit. And then we're going to finish off with actually saving that search so you can get back to it later on really quickly if it was something that you wanted. Maybe you want to run that search 2-3 days from now. It could even be for the same client kind of thing. So once we have that search saved, that'll pretty much conclude like kind of top to bottom what we were looking to cover for the session. And that's the point where we're actually going to end up jumping into ITSO Real Estate, the parallel system, so I can make some comparisons, because getting to the point of actually searching is as far as they've really given us so far in this beta website, kind of the parallel, the test website as you call it. So we'll actually jump in there as well. I'll be able to make some comparisons to it, what you can expect, to give you start putting that idea out there, because we don't have a timeline just yet, but in the next number of months, of course, it is going to be moving to that website once it's finalized. So quite a few different items that I've written down on the sheet here that I'm going to check off as we go along. But generally, a very large portion of what we're talking about is going to be on Matrix for sure. But first of all, that first item is accessing Matrix. And this is a little bit of what it looks like, right? So when you go and you're actually trying to get onto Matrix, right? It is on regional.ca. Okay. And if we make our way in here, you do end up on this kind of safe access, this Clarity login. Okay, and this is the reason for that is this Clarity system is like, it may ask you, hey, would you like to allow kind of location services, things like that. Well, the whole reason for this page before you get into Matrix is really just to prevent things like account sharing. So you do have to go through this safety feature, but it just asks for your OMID and password. Okay, enter those. And just like that, you make your way onto Matrix. Let me see here. Maybe there's a view that we can do. Here, let's full screen this a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit easier to see that. However, still, the website that you would be kind of navigating to in order to access Matrix is currently onregional.ca. So that's where kind of we ended up here, and right after logging in through Clarity, we are now on the Matrix system, where we can start to kind of work around and start to look for some listings. The first thing to note is when you land on this page, where it's bringing you right now is, this is called your dashboard. Okay, you'll see that I am currently selected on the Home tab. Well, on this Home tab or this dashboard, it's actually made up of a whole range of different widgets, as we call them. So all of these little boxes are all these different widgets that you have access to. Okay. You will notice really quickly that there is one of them that's like permanently pinned on there. So the only one that you can't move or close out or anything like that is titled News and Alerts. Okay, this is a place where at the board level, we might send you some messages. Perhaps your brokerage would forward you some information through this News and Alerts. But it is where you stay up to date with things that are changing, maybe upcoming events, all that kind of stuff. Again, it's the only one that's really stuck on there. You can't move it. It's always going to be in the top left-hand side. The rest of them, however, you can manipulate them. As soon as you see that little, kind of like a little crosshair with the arrows, you can click and drag and actually move these around. You could change the order, right? So yours are most likely going to look a lot different. Like your dashboard at this point probably looks very different than mine since you are able to manipulate it. All of them as well, they have this little X if you wanted to close them out. So for Market Watch, for example, if I want to close it out, I can hit this X, and what happens is it makes its way into this additional tab. So you'll notice Market Watch is now in there, a part of my additional, right? If I want to start closing this out, I'm more than welcome to. I could kind of get rid of all this noise on my screen, for example, and what would happen is, as a result, they would all end up in my additional tab. Okay, so you could, in effect, make this as busy of a screen as you'd like, or it could be as simplified as you want, right? I could be left with just the news and alerts that's permanent, or kind of the additional tab, for example. Maybe I didn't want Market Watch, Hot Sheets, and all that other stuff going on. Maybe I just wanted my search tab, for example. And let's see, maybe I just wanted a glimpse at my own listings, right? Well, maybe just those 4 things is good enough for me. But again, it really comes down to your own preference. You can, in effect, make it as busy as you'd like, right? You can even close this out. I know one that we are going to talk about in a second is actually external links. So I'll pull that one out. Just leave it for now with news and alerts, search, and external links, right? And the rest of them I know are just inside of the additional tab, for example. Okay. So yeah, as far as your widgets, I would say definitely get familiar with a little bit more about what you have access to here. Okay, this external links one is basically, most of these options are a single sign-on. So you see like SSO and stuff like that. Just means that these items, for the most part, when you click on them, they're all associated with your login. So if I click on something, like for our next topic, we're going to be talking about updating profile information. Well, that's something that happens in your members area. Okay, so if I was to click on the members area, right, it would just take me right to my members area on the Oakville, Milton, and District Real Estate Board website. And you'll notice I'm already signed in because I used that link. That's all the single sign-on is doing. It just means that because the logins are attached, I didn't have to enter it an additional time. It just takes me straight here to where I'm looking to go. Okay. So let me see here. I'm just going to exit the full screen so I can see the 2 tabs for just a moment here. But that is in effect where we want to absolutely go next. So a question that we get very, very often is things like, hey, I just want to update. I'm noticing that on realtor.ca that my email address is incorrect, or my phone number needs to be updated on there. I want clients to be able to call me on the right number. I'm not sure, why I haven't updated it just yet, but the incorrect one's showing publicly. Okay, well, really good. No problem. We can absolutely make a change there. It is something that you generally have access to. Some of these kind of more minor changes, you can actually update yourself by just going to your members area. Okay, I just want to show you one more way to get there so you can see the difference between this single sign-on. As you saw, that one took me directly there by clicking right here on members area. But if I was to go the longer way, right, I could in effect go to OMDREB.ca. So this is the home for the OMDREB website. I can click on members area, but I would have to enter my OMID and password. Just because I didn't use the single sign-on from Matrix in this case. But it would take me to the same place. This is the very same thing. You can always go to the website and just log in to your members area, or you can absolutely just make your way to this external links, and there's the options you're looking for here. If I just click on members area, perfect. Now we're there. So if you are looking to update any information, the important thing to understand is that that info does come from this members area. So any public information that's going out to realtor.ca, being shared through the MLS system, I'm not making those changes on Matrix. I'm actually making those changes on this profile right here. Okay, so if I was to change my primary phone contact, right? If I was to update my email on file, well, this form right here in your members area is what transfers through to realtor.ca and to the Matrix system. Really, really important. Okay, but you can make these changes. Anything that you're noticing that might be grayed out, okay, it's going to look different on mine because I'm association staff. However, if like your brokerage name or any of this information needs to be updated, well, the ones that are grayed out, of course, are the ones that you would reach out to our membership department and just request that they make the change for you. But anything that's available, right, you can change your email yourself and then just go ahead and click the save, and then it'll update throughout publicly. Okay. Just to show you one of the most important pieces on this form, however, okay, is I know it's a little obscure and it's just described by the letter Y or the letter N, is whether you want your information to carry through publicly to realtor.ca in the first place, okay? Because you can actually have it off here. This is your on-off switch for information going out to sites like realtor.ca. So show the mobile number, yes or no is what it's telling you. Okay, so if you don't click this yes option, then it'll just be the default phone number that you would have had set up in the past. If you're seeing the wrong number on realtor.ca and it's not updating and it's not this one, it's probably because you have the letter the letter N here. Okay, so you got to switch that to Y for yes, and then you will notice it actually carry through properly, and clients will be able to reach you on that number if they find your listing on realtor.ca. Okay, but this is the form. I'm going to leave mine to no in this case, just because I don't put up any active listings or anything like that. But definitely you want to switch to the yes option if you're looking to have that information public. Okay. One more important piece here that we're going to jump into absolutely is that idea of the profile picture. Okay. Whenever you are looking to have a profile picture, the public one that shows up on Matrix, on realtor.ca, all that kind of stuff, it does come from a specific place. Okay. And this one is something out of everything on this form. The only thing that you do absolutely update on Matrix in your settings is actually attaching your photo. And it does say here, to make changes to your profile picture, please log into Matrix. Okay, so I'll show you that now. All right, if I close this members area up, let's make our way back into Matrix, and I'll jump back into full screen here. So it is in a bit of an obscure place. Okay, so if you're following along, maybe jot this one down in a bit of a note. Okay, when you're updating your profile picture, it is something that you do in the Input tab. Okay. So the Input tab is where you go when you're setting up a listing and putting a listing up on the MLS system, but there is also one more utility for your profile in here, okay, and it's right in this Realtor section. So if you go to Input, click on Input, and then you go to this Realtor section. If you enter your OMID, in my case it's OM21657, well, if I enter that number and hit Edit, it is going to give me the option to modify my details, which includes my photo. Okay, so if you're trying to put on an actual display picture or a photo, okay, for your own login, the one that's going to be sent out to realtor.ca publicly on your profile, it does happen right here. Input, type in your OMID, and then you're going to make your way to Manage Photos. Okay, and we would browse for that photo. Okay, so if I was to make a selection here, you'll notice I did find a random picture on my phone. It's me with my sisters kind of thing. It's probably extremely small, so you wouldn't be able to see it too well on the share. But if I was to select this profile photo, for example, right, I just kind of cropped so it was just a headshot. Okay, and then I can certify and save. Well, this would end up being the photo that would make its way through to my profile. Okay, so we'll jump back and have a peek at it later. I believe that it does take a moment for it to update, just for it to be distributed properly to the members area and everything correctly. But we could just double check. I wonder how quick it goes. Yeah, so it still needs a little bit of time to update, but we have saved that information. So we should see this update maybe towards the session. We'll jump back in here just to kind of confirm. But, so let me close this back up. Right, get back into Matrix here. But with that, we have updated it. So you go to Input, type in your OMID, hit Edit, and then you can start managing that profile photo. Okay, perfect. Well, that does wrap up that kind of topic, a little bit more about updating your information and things like that. As far as having one more, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll throw this in as well, because you do have a My Information section here in your My Matrix, and this one is absolutely kind of all part of the same topic. So probably good to just point this one out. If you go to My Matrix and then My Information, this is where you will find the information that's first off pulling through from your members area. Okay. But as well, you do have a couple of different tabs here that might be relevant for you to work through. Okay, so such as your header and footer. Okay, if you were to email a listing to a client, well, what happens is they end up receiving it in the form of a portal. So let me try and open this up on my other screen here. I'm sure I have one not too far away. There we go. So here is one that looks like I sent it to myself as the client. Well, I sent this listing, for example, right? If I go ahead and I click on this, well, this is what your client would see in effect. Let me just exit the full screen so you can see the whole thing here. But this is what I'm talking about. I chose a particular kind of way to display my information. There's a header that came through, which is this image that I chose. So my client, if I sent them an emailed listing, such as in this case, 2182 Arborview Drive, well, it would show up in this way, right? And the important part would be like whether I wanted to have a bit of a header, make it look a little bit more professional, right? Well, you can manipulate that a little bit. It's right here in your header and footer section. Okay, you'll notice that I have chosen this option here where you, when you're looking at this banner, select a different banner or image and theme. Okay, if we go ahead and select that, well, if we made our way down this list, you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of kind of default ones. If you make your way down, they start to become kind of different images and stuff like that. I did choose just kind of a bit of a standard one that was available, so I'm just going to toggle away from that. I would have to scroll down probably a good long way before finding kind of the one that I kind of went with. Bit of a water here with the house on the right-hand side. But you do also have the option of using a custom one. Okay, so if you had something that maybe was a little bit more applicable to your business, you can do a custom one. Just pay attention to the image size. Okay, understanding that it is very rectangular, right? It's very narrow this way and extremely long towards the bottom. That's where this 120 pixels high by 1600 pixels wide comes in. It kind of gives you an idea of the image size that it's looking to accept. But if you create one on whatever editing software and then you save it in this size, well, you could just browse for it and kind of add it on, right? So perhaps if you want to have it, more, if you have your own personal real estate website and you just want it to have the colors that go along with it a little bit better, or something of that effect. Well, maybe, browse one, have that come through type of thing. Okay, that would be, as you can see here, it's a portal header, which is that little portal, that email that I opened up. Well, you can kind of personalize a little bit for your clients. Okay, and you also get to choose this information here in this top right hand, how it ends up displaying, for example. Okay. Same thing is going to be true for some of these other ones, right? I'm not going to go through every single topic. However, this is where you would go if you were creating an email signature, for example, right? As you can see, I did drop in a little bit of an Oakville Milton one. So if I was to email a listing to a client, it also has a bit of information here, kind of some images down here to look a little bit more professional, for example. I mean, yours can have your display picture. As you can see, you can include quite a bit, right? If I wanted to include an image, well, maybe it could start with my headshot in this section, and my name could be just to the right a little bit. But you can save your email signature so that it's kind of ready to go, and you already have that step done when you go to email clients or create auto emails, all of those fun things. Okay, so just not to be overlooked there, for that section, hover over My Matrix, make your way down to My Information, and you can manipulate a couple other profile specific things from this section as well. Okay. So that really does bring together the different sections that I wanted to introduce there with regards to, because that would really be some of that groundwork that you want to put in before you, in effect, start sending information to clients, right? Confirming your information's right on all sides, confirming your public information is going out properly and it's activated for Realtor.ca, and then starting to do kind of your images, signature information, that kind of thing. Okay. So next up, now we are absolutely going to start jumping into search features. Okay, and the first thing that comes into play when you are running searches, okay, is understanding that first off, and this topic is going to continue throughout, matrix is very, very rigid and specific when you run a search. So it's really important to understand that. It's not like a Google search, right? If I type in something in a specific field, for example, right? Maybe I was trying to say Main Street or something like that, and I made a typo. Well, Matrix isn't going to be as kind as Google in helping me fix this error, for example, right? It's not going to say, hey, did you mean Main Street? Did we want to just get rid of one of the A's? If I run the search, it's probably just going to say there's no results. So just bear that in mind. It's a little more rigid, okay? And with that being the case, I'm going to introduce a couple of different search features that you have access to, even on this front page. The first one, as you can see, I'm definitely going to be talking about is this search widget. Okay, I'll show you a quick comparison in a moment to how we could run that search as well in this middle section here, which is our speed bar search. Okay, and then we are absolutely going to talk about more features as we get into this search dropdown. So first off here, whenever you have a property that you specifically know the address to, like if you know information about a property, the very best place for you to run that search is most likely going to be this widget. It's very, very good at that, okay? Right? If I'm searching for a group of properties and I'm trying to come up with criteria, all that kind of stuff, well, I'm going to go into a residential search. We're going to see that in a moment. But when I know information, specific information like the address, this search widget's really going to be your best friend on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in a little bit of information here. I'm going to use a pretty unique street and number on this one, so 55 Burness, right? And if I run this search, because I know this property in kind of Thorold area, St. Catharines region, well, what it would actually do is give me all of the different times, right, that this listing was actually up on the market and all of the different statuses here. So these are my statuses, right? Whether these ones, it looks like it actually went to a firm sale in that case, but it also gives me the timeline. So it looks like perhaps the listing was put up in 2012, where eventually it was expired. It was also put up in 2013, where it resulted in a firm sale, for example. Well, you could see a timeline of what's going on, which all relates to this unique address here, notably 55 Burness. Well, something important to note, and I'll just jump right back to the Home tab for that one, is that I did keep it pretty simple in this case. I did not put in any kind of street type, right? So I kind of omitted like the street, avenue, road, circle, that kind of thing. Just 55 Burness in this case. And as well, I did put it all in lowercase. Okay, so when we run this search, you'll notice that in some cases, some of these streets might come through in capital letters. Well, the system itself, just so you're aware, is not case sensitive. Okay, so whether you put it as all caps or all lowercase or half capital letters, half lowercase letters, that's not going to affect the search. It's a lot like when you're creating emails and stuff like that. It's not going to give you anything different here if I had a capital B and then lowercase for the rest of the word. Still going to find Burness. Okay. Another important thing about this is that I did use a very, very unique address type, right? Burness. Well, something really important to understand when we're searching on Matrix is, well, Oakville and the Oakville-Milton District Real Estate Board are a part of the ORDIS system, right? We're participating members of ORDIS, which means that we do have access to the information from the rest of the participating boards of ORDIS. Things such as, like Cambridge, Waterloo, the Niagara Association of Realtors, right? So we're not only searching for the Oakville and Milton kind of, let's call it the Halton region. We're not only searching notably in the Halton region, we're searching everywhere, right? So if I was to write something in like King Street, right? Even if I put 100 King, well, it wouldn't just give me things that may be showing up in Oakville. I mean, we really are searching a larger system here. So we're having things in Waterloo, right? Let me see, city. So Waterloo, Hamilton, Stony Creek, Dundas, Hamilton, right? So we're finding all of the 100 King Streets, but not only if that's kind of an Oakville thing, right? So that's where you might take it to the next level. If it's not a very unique name and it's something like 100 King, well, in that case, maybe I would take it one step further and specify that I just want the one in Waterloo. Okay. Run the search, and now I have a unique address because we did specify Waterloo, for example, and we could start to see a timeline for that. So we see it all the way back to 1996 in this case, and the most recent time it was listed as 2019 in the fall. Okay. So next up is this little speed bar search. Okay, so remembering, like, we really want to use this one when we know the address. When we know the address of the property and we want to look for a history of that specific property using your search widget. Right up near the top here in the center, you do have this little speed bar search. And you can actually run very, very similar things in here. However, the speed bar search gives you a whole bunch of additional options on top of that as well that go along. So I'll introduce that a little bit. When you enter an address, right, if I was to do 55 Burness, right, again, omitting any street suffix or anything like that, well, we could run this search here, and it should look very, very similar. Okay, maybe the order is a little bit different on the statuses, for example, but it should look very similar, right? It's a historical, it pulled up that historical information, oldest being 2012 and the newest being 2018, for example. It's still finding that address. The things that become really, really intricate here, and if that interests you, you're going to see this come up pretty often here. This little question mark. Okay, not to be overlooked. This question mark can give you some extremely good information. If you just click on that, it should pop up a little document that might explain a little bit more about what's going on. So you'll see that it actually brought us to the speed bar help menu. So that was just from clicking on the question mark here. And it actually has a whole bunch of information about what you're able to enter in that speed bar search, right? We can do MLS numbers, can even do status types such as active, so A for active, right? Single family. We can do the city, price ranges. The list is like really, if you like getting into kind of short forms and making your searches a little bit quicker, you may find that you could do a whole range of them in this speed bar. So if I was to do something, for example, and I'm not going to spend too much time on the speed bar, that's really for kind of if you want to jump in and get more info there. But if we're going with maybe, let's do active single family because it's the ones we talked about, right? We could specify the Oakville area, and we might be able to do a price range such as, maybe our client wants 1.4 to 1.8 million, right? Knowing that the search will do kind of the other 3 zeros automatically. So this is 1.4 million to 1.8 million. And if we run this search, it'll just ask us to confirm it. So we could see the full search by just hovering over. So status is active, city is Oakville, current price range, and the property type is going to be residential, right? Well, if we select as a confirmation here, it'll actually run that search and give us everything that meets that range. So you'll see at the high end here, 1,799. So basically 1.8 million, right? And all of the different properties here are all Oakville-based active listings that are just single-family residential, for example. And in this case, we actually have 171 that are specific to Oakville. Okay? And that was just by running this quick little speed bar search. So definitely, if you're looking for to get a little more familiar with it, you really can run some intricate stuff, such as even like how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. Just have a read through this little document if it interests you on more on that one. Okay. Another piece that we do get a lot of calls about, and really not to be overlooked here, because this is a really, really useful tool, is right here towards the right-hand side. You have a recent searches box. Okay. If I am to click on that, well, it is in fact going to show me the recent searches that I've run in the system, such as, if you remember that last one that we did in the speed bar, active Oakville price range, it gave us 171 results. Well, we can see that here. It was ran at 1:38 p.m., for example. You do have a recent searches, and it actually saves your 50 most recent searches. Okay, so if like, 2 days ago, you ran a search in the system, right? And you just want to search that one again, and you just forgot to save it on your main page, for example, well, it's still most likely going to be here because you can see the most recent 50 searches, and it might just be a click away, right? You might not have to go into the search residential, click off all of your options. All of those steps may take a couple of minutes. Well, you might be able to just click on your recent searches and click on it straight away, and then you're right there. You just have your results, for example. Okay, so not to be overlooked, recent searches, really, really useful stuff right here on the right. Perfect. So with that, as I mentioned, we are going to be going into the idea of the wildcard now. If you remember at the beginning, I did mention that the searches are very rigid on Matrix. Well, how you would open that up and broaden the search a little bit to be a little more forgiving is by using a wildcard. So I'll show you that now, right? If we go to, we'll actually start with a realtor search, just to get an idea of the wildcard. I'll introduce it here. Okay, so if we go ahead and I open up that PowerPoint slide, for example, right? Well, my name is Eric Garand. If perhaps you didn't remember how to spell my whole last name, for example, but you did remember the G-A-R-A, right? Perhaps you're looking for a colleague. The only information you happen to remembering at the time is just the GARA. Well, I'll show you how you could find that colleague in the system. Okay, you are going to make use of the wildcard, which is depicted by this little asterisk. So I did Shift 8 on my keyboard, which is a Windows keyboard. This asterisk is the wildcard, and what it does is wherever you place that wildcard, okay, it's saying that anything can happen. So anything, any combination of letters in this example can happen following GARA, and the system would accept that. Okay. You'll notice as well, I did not put a capital letter for the G. Okay. Just remembering that nothing is case sensitive on matrix, so I don't have to specify this. I could just go ahead with a lowercase. But what happens here is I don't even have to put it in a first name. It looks like it's unique enough in this case, and there's currently 7 matches, right? So I might throw in the GARA, put in the wildcard, telling the system that, hey, you know what? The first 4 letters need to be these ones in this order. However, anything can come following those letters. That's what the asterisk is doing. If we go to results here, we'll see everything that meets that criteria, such as Garaka, Garami, Garand, and just like that, you found a colleague in the system, right? So you're able to see association staff, Oakville Multi-District Real Estate Board, right? You would see all the information, the public information, perhaps by going and looking a little bit further, right? Clicking on my OMID, you would find my office information. And would you look at that? It looks like the profile picture that we chose probably about 15 minutes ago has updated through. And if you remember, right, it was something we did in the input tab, and it is carrying into the actual profile now, which is really good. So we have a bit of a confirmation there that, yeah, it probably takes about 15, 20 minutes, but it updates and it will carry through. And if I put up a listing on realtor.ca, of course, it would also share through that profile photo. Okay. But that would be using the wildcard feature, right? All we did was type in this GARA. We're still able to track somebody down. That same idea is going to come into play if you're searching for listings, right? You can use the wildcard feature. Sometimes you may have to think outside of the box a little bit, but I'll show you that now. So where we're going to do that is we're just going to jump into the search tab here. From the search dropdown, we'll make our way into the residential tab. Okay. And just before we make our way down to where I'll introduce more of the wildcard feature, probably good to just introduce the layout of the form a little bit. Okay, so if you're not super familiar with the way that this one works, it is meant to feel a lot like if you've seen a property information sheet, right, or an info data sheet. When you go to represent a client, you're going to be filling out one of those forms. You're going to be confirming a whole bunch of information about the property. The client is going to sign off on it. Well, that's the thing. These fields and these criteria that are showing up on this screen are lining up with what you would typically see on a property information sheet, right? Whether it is a freehold dwelling or if it's a sale and not a lease, for example, right? Well, you would see all of that type of criteria coming through. So you do have kind of your status types on this left-hand side, right? Through the center is going to refer a lot more to the location of the property, right? Where is it landing on the map? What kind of region, the neighborhoods that are set out, okay? Things specific to the property, as well as this right-hand side is also very specific as far as the features, right? And what is the price? What type of rooms are involved, square footage, all that kind of stuff. So really a whole bunch of different things that would, if we start to select these, well, those would be the criteria that the system would search for. And as long as those are true, it gives us a property as a result. Okay. What we're going to do in this case, to stay on that topic of the wildcard feature, just bring your attention to the center of the screen. Okay, we're going to make our way down the center, and where we're going to talk about it a little bit is actually in this bottom piece here, the public remarks. I find that this is a really, really good place if you are looking to make use of your wildcard feature. And I've heard some really creative ones in here, like sometimes, you know, someone may use something like ghost stations, right? Well, you could search for specific things that perhaps the listing agent would have included in the remarks section if they find that it's something relevant, right? Well, you can actually find properties that way. Sometimes you're going to do it by putting in criteria. Sometimes you may do it by actually searching for keywords in the remarks. Well, if we were to make use of one that's very, very common, it seems these days in definitely in the Oakville, the Halton area, is the idea of a nanny suite or an in-law suite, right? If I was to type in-law, right? Well, I would end up with 0 matches. The only reason for that right now is because, again, the system is so specific that it's trying to find a listing in the system where 100% of the remarks section is made up by these exact characters. That's where the wildcard feature becomes really important, right? It's very, very likely that someone that was typing in this information in the remarks section would have put perhaps like a space, right? Perhaps it was in the middle of a sentence, such as this. Includes an in-law suite in the upper floor, above the garage, any of that kind of stuff, right? Well, that's where the wildcard feature becomes very important. Now we're saying that the remarks section, which may be made up of like up to 1,500 characters, it's probably a big paragraph that the listing agent typed up. Well, we're saying that anything can come in front of this word, and also anything can come following the word. Could be spaces, could be slashes, right? It could be any character, but we do have to depict on either side that anything can come before or after, or else we don't get any matches. Okay, but in this case, just by searching something like in-law, we do get 405 matches in the system. Okay. Now, if you remember the part where I said you may have to think outside the box a little bit, okay, that's because what happens if the listing agent spelt it incorrectly, right? What if they put in-law with a space instead of a hyphen? Well, it looks like 73 listings on the system currently have it spelt in this incorrect way. Okay, so it's going to be important that we take in a couple of different features here to get the best access to information, for example. And what we can do is introduce a second type of wildcard here, which is the idea of the combination. Okay, so anytime that you're combining different information on matrix, you can do it by putting a comma and a space, right? So I'm saying anything can come before in space law, as well as anything after, and I would like to use an additional one by doing a comma space. I also want to include anything before in law with no space. Anything can be following that word as well. Okay? And we actually end up with an additional 139 matches in this case, right? If we were to include that final one, that correct way of spelling in-law, well then now we would actually have access to the accurate amount, or a much better amount here where, as you saw previously, we were maybe missing out on about 130 or 140 different matches that we could be making use of, right? We have 535 right now. If I was to just kind of cut this information, so we have a difference of from 405 to 535. Well, by thinking outside the box, using the combination, we actually end up with an additional 130 listings, which the right property for your client might be one of those 130 that we may not have noticed at first. Okay, so really, really important that in this case, right, because remarks sections, and I'm sure you've seen it yourself, sometimes they can be riddled with spelling mistakes, so it can be something that you might have to include when you're doing these types of searches. Okay, so that would be the idea of the wildcard. And for example, now that I have 535, well, from here, right, I might go up and now specify that I don't want a place that's a lease. Well, I would select a place that is, only the sales, and maybe not condominiums, but freehold, right? You would start with a certain section and you would kind of work from there. I find that the best way to work with the search tab is to keep an eye on the matches, make a change, have a look at how many matches you're left with as you work your way down to what your client is looking for. Okay, I wouldn't suggest selecting like 15 different things on this page all at once and then going down and looking at your matches at the end. A lot of the times you're going to end up with 0 matches, right? So do them kind of one at a time as you break down the criteria, find something that works, and then you would kind of break down exactly what your client is asking you to find in the system, for example. Okay, but this remark section and using the wildcard, you may end up doing, as I mentioned previously, right? Maybe it's your way of finding go stations because there isn't like a checkbox. I can't just click on go stations out of the list. I might have to do something to do with the public remarks. Maybe my client is looking for stainless steel appliances included, that kind of thing. So you can kind of run searches in the system, making really effective use of things like the wildcards and using those asterisks. Okay. If you remember from the speed bar, I did show you that question mark, right? If I click on that, the same thing is happening here. This is the help menu for the remarks section. If you're looking for additional, there's actually some different wildcards you can use, things like the question mark, things like the combination that we used, which was this comma space. Okay, so again, really not to be overlooked, this question mark can be extremely helpful. If there's something you're not sure of and there's a question mark next to it, it's probably going to give you some really good information about it, for example. Okay, like if I did this, for example, after seeing that this menu tells us, okay, that we could do something like this, right? Use for a character placement wildcard. Well, if you remember, we did run in-law with a space as well as in-law without a space. Or sorry, in-law with a hyphen and in-law with a space. Well, if I just put a question mark instead, well, it would account for anything being in that space. It could be a hyphen, it could be a space, it could be a slash, right? A question mark would just mean that anything can go there. So you just made use of a whole new one. If you click on that question mark, give you some really good information in a lot of cases. Okay. So what we'll do now, I'm actually going to back out of this one. We are actually going to run the residential search now, where we're actually looking for specific listings. Okay. I find that the very, very best way to start when you're running any kind of search in the system, this is kind of personal preference, but I'll definitely show you here, is I really, really, really do like to use the map when I do so. Okay. I'll show you something right away though. If you look at right now, without having made any selections, right, it's showing us 5,000 plus matches because we haven't broken down any criteria, right? So if I was to just skip everything and jump right to the map tab, well, what would happen in effect is, first off, it's going to tell me there's way too many search results, right? It'll tell me to zoom in so I can narrow it a little bit more. Maybe it can start displaying a little bit of what I'm looking for. And when I make my way onto the map, well, it's likely to be an absolute mess of listings, right? Just so much stuff going on. It's hard to see the streets. It's hard to see the neighborhoods. So doing it in this way at first might seem a little daunting, okay? But I'll just show you how to kind of get rid of that noise at first. So what I like to do is, and you'll notice me doing this often, is kind of going in between the tabs here, right? We have our criteria tab, our map tab, and our results tab. If I clicked on results, I would undoubtedly have those thousands of listings all in this kind of in a column on top of each other, for example, right? You can see all of them here and they're all in a big list. The map gives us all of them visually, and the criteria tab is where we can break down what actually shows up in that results tab. Well, Something that I find very, very useful here is actually just putting a 0 on my price. That's usually my first step. Whenever I go to run a search, whether it's residential or any kind of different type of search, since I know I'm always starting with the map, I actually zero out my price on purpose. Okay, and the reason for that is because there aren't any listings on the system that are at $0. Okay, which in effect gives me 0 matches, which is done on purpose a little bit here. Okay, and the whole point of that is just so that I can go to my map and I could look at the information and I can actually look at an empty map, right? It's not slowed down by the thousands of listings that are available on the system right now. I just like to put a 0 so that I could start working with the actual area. I just really prefer to draw that area visually and working from there, okay? I find that to be the most effective way to approach the searches. And maybe we'll just choose a little piece of Oakville here. Maybe we'll go to kind of this Glen Abbey area, okay? And we could specify a little region that we would like to include in our search, okay? A bit of a base that we're gonna work from before we start to break down any kind of criteria. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna start to introduce the different tools that you have on this map feature, okay? They're all here at the top end of the map. So from INRIX drive time to a couple of different drawing tools, followed by a layers icon and a recenter, which I mean, this one, when you click it, just kind of recenters you on the map. But let's definitely say a few words about these. I'm going to start with these 4 drawing icons, from radius to freehand polygon. Well, what these little icons do is they give you the option to actually draw something on your map. So right here, I chose the radius tool. If I was to kind of click and drag, I'd be able to specify an area here. In that case, it was about 7.4 kilometers. Okay, and I can either choose to include the shape, right? This information is just coming up when you go over that little red dot, gives you kind of more info there. I can either include the shape or I could exclude the shape. So if my client said, hey, you know what, like I lived right in this area of Palermo last 2 years ago, let's just move outside of that region. I would like to check out something new. I just want to change it up. Well, maybe you would do an exclude here, right? And then if you were to take your rectangle and they just more notably wanted to be right in this rectangle for Westmount, well, maybe we would include this shape. Okay, so it would kind of just take out that whole circle, including this piece, and then we would be everywhere here in Westmount, and a little bit of kind of Glen Abbey here is just what's going to meet our search, for example. Okay, that was the radius and the rectangle. You also have some more kind of freeing drawing ones here, such as this draw polygon, right? So if I wanted to do the very specific road of Pilgrim's Way, for example, and just try to follow along with the street, well, we can absolutely do that. I know I'm going kind of quickly here, but you're not stuck with just those 2 shapes. And if you want to do the freehand, it could be even more specific, for example. Right? This is the freehand polygon. I probably should zoom in to do a section like that. Absolutely butchered it. But in this case, right, you can draw any shape that you want with the freehand one. Okay, and as you can see, I have 4 different shapes that we've done on the map. Whether they're being included or excluded is totally up to you. But I'm just going to hover these and actually delete them off. So like what would happen here, if I was to show you very, very quickly just before we specified it, if I was to go to my criteria, for example, and take away this 0, well, because of the drawing that we made, the only place that the listings can exist is within our drawing, right? The 2 drawings that are included are the only place that the listing can actually be a part of, right? Can't be in my excluded one unless I activate it by saying include this section, for example, right? And you can see there's actually 2 here that overlapped, right? So what I'm going to do before I delete them, I'm definitely going to go back and put that 0 in. Okay, and then let's delete these shapes. So again, really just kind of You can kind of click on this plus minus to zoom in and out of your map, or you can use a bit of a scroll wheel on your mouse if you have that option. But let's go ahead and just delete these shapes that we drew. And I'll show you a couple more options that you have here on the map. A very, very useful tool that you have is called layers. So on this map, right, I might not be super familiar with the neighborhoods that the board has chosen in this region, for example. Well, if I click on this layers icon, it's kind of like, blueprints stacked up together. If I click on this, it'll give me different boundaries that I can add to my map. And I find that the most useful one is called neighborhood. Right? As soon as I click on that, you'll notice this kind of purplish line come up on the screen, which will outline exactly where those neighborhoods are that the specific board has set out. Okay? I could see that Glen Abbey runs pretty much like, let's just call it east to west, for example, here. And I could see the borders of it. I could see where it changes over to Westmount or where it changes over to Bronte Creek, right? So very, very useful tool here. And it's very quick. You just click on it. You can activate that neighborhoods tab and you can have a look at it. So I'm going to zoom out. It is kind of hard to look at when you zoom out too much, but I just want to show you that for all of the participating Ortus boards, you are going to have access to those neighborhoods, right? So I'm not just stuck with the neighborhoods of the Halton region. I can see the ones in Cambridge. I could see the ones in Waterloo, for example, right? You're very, very, it's very quick to kind of jump in and look at those other ones as well. It takes a little bit to load. So when you zoom in, it takes a second. Once it loads, it's a lot easier to kind of read it, but very, very useful tool here, the layers icon, where you can activate your neighborhoods layer. Okay, finally, with all of these icons, this very last one that I definitely want to introduce is INRIX Drive Time. So what this will do, okay, INRIX Drive Time uses Google Analytics and different driving patterns to actually create a drawing on your map for you based on that information. Okay, so if I was to just click on INRIX Drive Time right now, okay, it's going to ask me to enter a location to drive to or from. So perhaps the conversation I'm having with my client, maybe out of the information that we're putting together to find their listing, they tell me something like, hey, I work at the Oakville Real Estate Board at 125 Navy Street in Oakville. Well, I need to be there by 8:15 in the morning, and I don't want my commute to be any longer than, let's say, 15 minutes, right? Well, I could type that in. Okay, just hit enter, so it confirms it, right? It found 125 Navy Oakville. We said 15 minutes is the commute. However, we need to be there by 8:15, and yes, we are driving to that location to arrive in the particular time frame. If we add this to the map, let it load here, well, what it's doing in effect is it drew on the map an INRIX drive time that tells me, right, what my client can expect or where my client can expect that they must be looking for a property for if they're trying to get to work by 8:15, right? This is the 125 Navy Street location. Well, if they lived, I mean, of course, it's a bit of an estimate here, and it's based on driving information from Google Analytics. So it's saying that if I was in this Bronte area on Lakeshore Road, I can go all the way out to Mississauga Street, and if I was to leave my house at 8 in the morning, it would take me 15 minutes to get to this 125 Navy Street. Okay. The part where it becomes really, really awesome is you can actually draw multiple INRIX drive times on the screen as well, right? If I was to put a second one, an additional one, and maybe I was working with a couple, like a husband and wife, for example, well, I could draw a second one, include it on the map, and wherever the two drawings crossed, well, that would maybe indicate a really good place where they could live and they both can make it to work on time, right? You can start to get really creative, and it does end up being very personal for your client as well. So I'll show you how this INRIX drive time may change as well, which is really important. So if I go up and just like the other drawing tools, if I go to that little red dot, I can start to manipulate it a little bit, right? I can either delete the shape or I could change the drive time info. So let's go ahead and select that change drive time info. And what I'll show you is I'll still keep it at 15 minutes drive. What I'll do is maybe I'll change it to 4 a.m. where I would expect that there would be less cars on the road, right? So I should be able to get a lot further than this. If I click update, I should be left with a much larger drawing. So what it did now is it used the Google Analytics to show me how far you can leave on average. If I left, instead of leaving at 8 in the morning, maybe I left at 4 in the morning, well, I'd be able to get further because there's less cars on the road, right? We weren't able to get all the way to the edge of this Erin Mills area. Now we might actually be able to live up here and kind of make it if we left at 4 in the morning. This has updated quite a bit due to kind of COVID and stuff like that, okay? And I saw that change very, very quickly and very drastically while I was doing these trainings, right? As you saw, I was just doing 8:15, right? Well, to give you an idea here, if I was to change the drive time info to something like 45 minutes, right? Well, this is more like what mine looks like. I'm kind of commuting in from this kind of East Hamilton area around here. It does take me about 50 minutes, an hour to get to work type of thing. Luckily right now we're kind of just working from home. The office isn't open just yet at our Navy Street location, but it is pretty accurate. Like, it actually shows you how far you can get with that in mind. This one we chose 45 minutes. So even using a large range like that, it shows you what you can expect at a particular time, which can be extremely useful. Just like if I was to type in, hey, I just want to go from Hamilton to Oakville, how long is it going to take me starting at 8 in the morning, right? Well, this one will actually do it, and it'll draw the shape on the map, which might be really useful for your client. Okay. Let me just delete that shape. What we're going to end up doing is, in order to get the search results that we want and have a look at that list and everything, let's draw an actual shape for what our client may want. So what I'll do is I'll start by activating the neighborhood tab, okay, and have a look at, maybe based on what our client and the conversation we had, perhaps our client wants to include this West Oak Trails area, right? I'm just going to go very kind of a quick grab of the areas here. Okay, perhaps they want the Glen Abbey neighborhood as well, and maybe they want to close it off at this Westmount region. So the drawing that we've made effectively is not 100% of Glen Abbey, but kind of this section north of the 403. So we have an area of Glen Abbey, nearly the entire West Oak Trails area, and we can even change that by maybe dragging it a little bit larger here. And we have the whole Westmount area. Okay, there's an example of maybe our client told us that, hey, those are the spots, those neighborhoods that I really like. Well, that's the only place I want to look for a property. Well, if I'm trying to do that in the criteria tab, it's going to be a lot more difficult and a lot more daunting, right? If you can't see it visually and you can't see which neighborhoods and where they actually land, that's where using the map is going to be like so much easier to work with. Okay, so we've just specified a couple different neighborhoods. I'm going to just disable this neighborhoods tab. What we're left with is our drawing, right? We know we got our West Oak Trails, our Westmount, and our Glen Abbey section. If we are to go over to our criteria tab at this point, right, remembering that we purposefully put on this zeroed out price, we could take that away, we can make our way back to the map, and we would expect that the only place that has listings is specifically what we drew in. So we just have to kind of let that load here, okay, and we could see, well, good news. We have quite a few listings to work from here, notably around 100, well, pretty close to 130 listings, for example. But the important part now is, well, we may have to start to break down the criteria for our client a bit, right? Did our client look for what this seems to be maybe a condominium lease, right? Versus a condominium sale or a residential lease, right? You're going to get familiar with the icons and maybe what they're referring to. And here we have maybe more of a residential sale at almost a 1.5 million, for example, right? Well, we may need to break this down a bit more for our client. So we're going to do that in the criteria tab. But again, that importance was getting that solid base, right? That drawing on the map. So again, imagine that we were trying to work this from the neighborhood section. We would have to know how to find the exact neighborhood and only select those 3 that we were working from. It's going to be a lot easier to do that visually on the map, okay? But what we're going to do now is definitely we're going to make our way through a little bit of criteria here. So first thing is our status types. Okay, I haven't made any changes to this just yet, but first thing to maybe mention is that you do have 2 different conditional status types. Okay, you have a mixing up my words here. You have an option where it's conditional sale and they are continuing to show the property. And you also have an active conditional here where they are no longer showing the property. That's the ACS and the ANS, okay? Continuing to show, no longer showing, right? Maybe in this case, our client is looking for something a bit more simple, just active properties. However, you can choose any of these statuses, right? We have our active status, our conditional options, whether it's sold pending, sold closed, right? Expired, suspended, and canceled, right? So a whole bunch of different things that you can choose as far as the status. To keep it more simple, we're just going to go with an active listing, okay? Right up next to it, you do have date ranges that you can work from. So I can either type in something like 0 to 10, right? This would tell me that it would only show me active listings that went up from this point in time to 10 days back. Okay, there's an example. This is just going to show me the active listings within the last 10 days. I can also choose to do it on the map. If I wanted, today's the 28th of July, well, maybe I wanted the 15th to the 28th, right? In that case, I probably ended up with like 13 or 14 days, right? Well, you could choose a date range. I'm just going to clear this, right? This is what this allows. When you choose sold closed, for example, sometimes there's a default for some of these. This would, in effect, show me all of the properties that closed in this area that we drew in the last 6 months, or 180 days, give or take. Okay, or you can create the date range yourself if you like that better. But let's just kind of close that. We're just going with the simplified active in this case, right? Maybe our client is only looking for a freehold property. Let's get rid of those condominiums. Okay, and we'll scroll down a little bit lower here. We'll also select sale. So just having chosen 3 different options here from the left, active, freehold, and sale, looks like we've taken away around, I want to say about 40 or 50 of our matches, right? We were pretty close to 150 a moment ago. So if we were to even jump to our map right now, look at it a bit further, okay, we end up with a whole bunch of different price ranges, but it should only leave us with residential options, okay? But we do have a massive jump in kind of a price range, it looks like. Seeing some lower end ones at like close to 700,000, for example, 700, 800,000, things like that. And at the high end, it looks like we were almost pretty close to like 2 million. I think the highest was like 1.7 that I saw at a glance. But if we wanted an even closer breakdown of the results, for example, well, we can see them here, right? Well, it looks like there actually was one kind of hidden in there somewhere that was pretty much on the cusp of 2 million being the highest one in that area, right? And if we opened it up a bit, you'll notice it's only displaying 15, and you might have seen me click on this earlier when we were looking at 55 Burness and King Street and stuff like that. Well, you can have up to 100 displayed on screen. In this case, we only have 54. It looks like our lowest one is in fact $1, but we have a $700,000 one ranging all the way to 2 million. Okay, so we may go back to our criteria tab. based on the information that we just saw, we're probably going to break down our price a little bit. Maybe our client told us that, hey, I'm looking for a property in the price range of 1.3 to 1.6 million, right? Maybe a gap of 300,000, understanding that with this check mark, we are going to omit those last 3 zeros. So this is 1,300,000 to 1,600,000. And maybe we could just jump to our map and see what we're left with. Aha, now it's looking a little bit better. So we're down to 13 results that we might have to just kind of filter through, things that are more relevant to what our client's looking for. But you'll notice, and this part's really important too, is we kind of did just 2 or 3 options on the left, and we only did 1 option on the right. And we're down to 13 results inside of this map, okay? So that's where it becomes really, really important to kind of work through your options, maybe 1 or 2 at a time. I really would stay away from selecting like 15 things at once, right? If I start to select things like bungalow, rural, right? Like try to leave out those irrelevant ones and just work with the important things. The rest you're going to get to, right? Once I look at this listing here and I get into this listing and I see the exact square footage from looking at the listing, well, maybe that's a lot more effective than choosing a square footage in the search criteria, right? I've got 13, I can search through these quickly enough, find the ones that are really relevant for my client, for example. Okay. Something like that, like 13, right? Maybe you get down to like 5 of them that are really more applicable. Right? If I go to the results, we should see the 13 listings here, right? Well, we would be able to make our way over to the side, right? Perhaps the number of bedrooms is going to be really relevant for our client. Maybe they said, hey, I want a property with 4 or more bedrooms. Well, we might get rid of this one with the 3 bedrooms, right? So you'll start specifying that, but I just wouldn't suggest, doing it right away. Like I know your client might have said, hey, I want 4 or more bedrooms, right? Well, take it one at a time. You don't want to get to the point that you have 0 listings and then you're not really sure where to go from there. Kind of have a look at what you're working with to see if it's going to make a big drastic change, right? If the client said, I want 5 or more bedrooms in my price range, well, we would only be left with 2 listings, the one that has 6 and the one that has 5. So take your time, have a look at the information, and then make the change that you think is going to be most effective. So we're definitely going to talk a little bit about this screen now. Okay, here's the part where we are going to be more notably customizing the listing displays. Okay, because you can actually make changes to this list to make it, the information a little more relevant to what you want to see. Maybe you want to see it in a different way. Maybe it's silly that my list date is all the way on the right. Maybe I want it more towards the left. It's something important to me, for example. Well, you can move around what comes up on this screen, and that's what we're going to work on right now. First thing I want to mention though is just if you are a little bit newer, here we have MLS numbers. Just want to show, just kind of give you a quick intro to some of these different ones, okay? Because you'll notice, right, some of them are starting with 308, some have TW at the beginning, some have XH. What in the world does that mean? Okay, well, anything that starts with the 308, sometimes you'll see them from 307, 308. Those are the ones that are put up and listed by an ORDIS member. Okay, so Oakville, Milton, or OMDREB, we are a part of a participating ORDIS board. Well, whenever you put up a listing, it should start with something similar, like a 307 or a 308. Okay, that's all that means, is that the listing agent is putting it, like if I listed a property on the matrix system, it would come through as most likely a 308 right now. TW would be an example of a shared listing. Okay, so this is an exclusive agreement that OMDREB has with TREB. Okay, and it's location based, which is really important to note. Okay, based on area. If a TREB member lists a property on Stratus in the areas of Oakville, Milton, or Halton Hills, that listing will be shared through to the matrix system for an OMDREB member to see. That's why we're seeing this one. Okay, it's based on that exclusive agreement. If a TREB member listed a property in Mississauga, I would not see it. If a TREB member listed a property in Cambridge, I would not see it. Okay, this is based on an exclusive agreement. This property is in Oakville. It's in that space that we drew. Well, it actually was put up by a TREB member. Okay, and we could see that if we just clicked on it really quickly and we saw that the listing salesperson, right, and we kind of got more info. Well, they are a Toronto Real Estate Board member, right? Well, it was put up by a TREB member, but it was shared through to this system, and it's been assigned a TW for Toronto West, okay? Same thing's happening down here, XH. We also have, this one is not an exclusive one. This is a much more open sharing of information that we have with RAB, right? This is saying that it was actually a member of the Real Estate Board of Hamilton Burlington. This is a Hamilton, that XH, right? The listing agent would be a member of RAB, Connie Kowalski, Realtor, Hamilton Burlington, right? RAB member. Well, it's been shared through, even though it's in the location of those neighborhoods in Oakville that we selected, well, we could see that. So we have shared from Toronto, anything that came from Ortis, and shared from Hamilton, right? So you will see these titles and you'll kind of get used to what they're referring to, but there are a lot of different agreements in place between shared information. Really, really good stuff to kind of get more familiar with, because we are looking at a system that's shared between this listing information is going across quite a few different boards in some cases. So really good to get educated on that. Okay, we're seeing all the addresses, we're seeing the price range, for example, right? We talked about the listing date, we can even see the days on market. Well, here's the part where we may want to customize this to make it a little bit more user-friendly for what we're looking for. Okay? And what you'll notice is, much like your widgets, when you hover over the title area, like this gray section, well, you'll notice that crosshair pop up. That's the option that it gives you to manipulate a little bit, right? As I mentioned previously, well, maybe this list date, right? Noticing that the hand looks really different, I can either click on the title or I can click and drag, right? That space that's there, that kind of gray area. Maybe I want list date to be over here towards the left, right? Perhaps I find that really, really important. I want to see it right away. I don't want to have to drag to the right to see it. Well, maybe I could put it right out here in the center, right next to the address, for example. Okay, let's have a look at some other stuff we have, right? Such as days on market. Well, maybe the days on market actually in my mind are even more relevant than the list date, and I just want to have it right up front, right next to the address, for example. Okay, well, you can do that. You can move them around. Okay. Another option that you have, and you saw there, I kind of clicked on it by accident, is when you click in the gray space, okay, so not so much as a click and drag, but I actually clicked right in that space, it will pop up a menu where you have a couple things you can manipulate. Okay, I can either remove the column, which would get rid of this whole address field, or I can insert a column. Right? We have DOM here. Well, maybe I want to put in something that's even, in my mind, extremely important to do with the days on market. CDOM. And I'll explain that in a second. Okay, let's drop that one in. I'll actually put it right next to it here. So now what I'm looking at is the address, the days on market, the continued days on market, followed by the list date and the price. Right? Maybe I really like the way this looks a lot better. And every time that I run a residential search, remembering that this was a residential search that we ran, well, maybe I want it to look like this next time that I run a residential search. Okay, really important. Here's the part where you have to save what you just moved around. Okay, it happens right here, this little gear icon. I almost want to zoom in a little bit more so you can see it better. This gear icon is where you can set the default. Okay, if I click on it, I can either set the current display and sort order as my starting default, or I could reset to the system search defaults. So you have two options here. In this case, I definitely want to set this default. So if I click on that, that'll be my default. From now on, your search defaults has been set, which means that if I run a residential search, when I get to the results tab, it's going to display it in this order: the MLS number, the address, days on market, continued days on market, blah, 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 following, okay? So if you want to save yourself some time, right, maybe you don't want to have to drag that every single time to make it look a bit better, right? You would just have to make the change and set it as your default in this first option, okay? If you lost something, right, and I just got rid of the address by accident and removed it and then hit apply and I wanted it back, well, you can always just search for it by typing in insert and typing address, or you can go right back to the system default by hitting this reset, and it'll just kind of put it in that first order that we had when we came in the first time. Okay, let me zoom out once here. As promised, I did mention that I would explain CDOM a little bit more. So what happens is, this is very, very common these days, where realtors either choose that they want to do a price adjustment, right? Maybe they want to do a price reduction so that it shows up in a specific way when people are searching for the listing, okay? Maybe that price reduction has to do with your marketing goals, right? Well, maybe you would do it that way. Another thing that real estate agents seem to do pretty often is the idea of canceling and relisting the listing. Okay, because there's no minimum or maximum to setting up a listing and posting it on the MLS system, well, maybe your listing has been up for 15 days and you just want to cancel it and you want to relist it so that it resets the days on market. Okay, whether you're doing that to be a little deceptive, you do have the option to cancel and relist instead of doing a price change, right? The two options are there. Well, what'll happen is, for example, this Alderbrook Drive, that's what this agent tried to do. Okay? They canceled the listing 29 days ago and relisted it. So it's technically, at first glance, I would think that this listing's only been up for 29 days. Well, what happens is there is another column called CDOM. This is the continued days on market that gives you a better idea of how long this listing was on the market in actuality, okay? In order for the CDOM to get reset to 0, such as this listing here and this listing here, right? Or this 1 over here, or this 3 over here, what has to happen is there has to be a 60-day period elapsed where the listing was not on the market, okay? If 60 days have not gone by, the CDOM is just going to keep ticking. That happened here. I mean, look at this drastic number. Oops, dragged that by accident. We have a listing that's only been on the market for 8 days apparently, but it's actually been on the market for 2/3 of a year, let's call it, right? This is a long time. Don't really want to do the math in my head, but it's like 7 months or something, right? 7.5 months this listing has been on the market. At first glance, I might think that it was only on for 8 days. It's definitely been on the market longer than that. Okay. CDOM, I find, is really, really a great way to have an idea of the listing agent's kind of marketing strategy here, because you can just make this change. Even if you don't have CDOM in your column, however, you can always find that information by looking at the listing itself, right? If I was to click here on 1457 Mayor's Manor, well, there's a little icon here, which is the matching property history, right? If I clicked on this, I would see all of that traffic: cancel, relist, expired, cancel, relist, right? I can see the whole timeline in detail at any point for any listing. Okay, so you're not stuck only looking at DOM, CDOM. You can always find this information, whether you're looking at this list view or not, right? If I went in to the listing itself, there's even a section where CDOM shows up, right? Because it is a criteria that shows up. I can always see it on any listing, just like how we could see the DOM near the top, there's a CDOM near the bottom in the realtor information. Okay, so whether the realtor is trying to hide the fact that it's only been on, that it has been on for 200 days, for example, anyone searching the system can actually see that. They're not going to be able to hide the CDOM, right? But just understand that at first glance, it might not be a brand new listing. This one is definitely not a brand new listing. It's been around the block for a bit. Okay, 222 days worth. I just really like to put it on my list display here. So you may have seen me click on this a few times. Probably a really good time to mention that. Okay, whenever you're running searches and you're navigating on Matrix, it's going to be really important that you stay away from this back and forward arrow key. Some of the stuff you do on Matrix is going to be time-stamped and important based on, you know, if I chose criteria and then hit something like results, right? Well, those are like multiple actions that are happening to get to my end goal, right? Definitely stay away from hitting back and forward arrow keys because that could affect the criteria, right? There's always a way for you to navigate in between screens by ignoring your back arrow and your forward arrow. If I go and I jump into a listing because I wanted to see this Mayor's Manor a bit, I click on the MLS number. I'm here in the listing itself. I am not going to hit the back arrow. I'm going to click on whichever option takes me to where I want to go. I could still go to the criteria tab. I could still go to the map tab, and I can also go back to my member single line display, which was this list. Okay, I can click on the Hamilton shared listing. I can make my way back to the list. Okay, so get familiar with navigating. You definitely want to forget your backspace. Okay, definitely don't want to be using those because they might affect your search. Something to show you as well is we absolutely have our recent searches here. The one that had 13, remember we went down from 128 to 54 to 13. Well, we can always click this one. If we wanted to exit out of this list completely and we want to just go right back to it, it's going to be in our recent searches. And great to see that it's actually kept our default that we set with address DOM CDOM, for example. Okay, if I ran a different one, let's see, when did we search for this one, right? This one was not a residential search. It was on a blank here, it was like a realtor search in the system, right? Well, I don't have CDOM, DOM, this is a different search. Okay, so what that would mean is I just created the default for residential, right? If you are the type that is creating a whole bunch of, like if you're running cross-property searches or you're running land searches, well, you may have to just create a default for it. But from now on, my residential tab is specific. When I click on residential, if I run anything, right, this is full open market here, I would expect it to hold that default. Anytime I run a residential search, I'll see DOM, CDOM, list, date in this order. Okay, I've changed the listing display by using the customization here. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So I have a question really quickly in the chat here. Can you show again, how did you get the history of the CDOM? Yeah, so that is something that you have a couple different places, okay? Every listing is going to come with this little icon, which is the matching property history. So you can select that if you want to find out more information about it. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to our 13 results that we had previously. So I'll use the recent search, I'll go back to the 13 results, and then we can find this property history, right? If I was to click next to, let's say, Stratus Drive, it's 26 days on market, it's also 26 continued days on market. We click on that matching property history, we'll see what ended up happening here. Okay, it looks like the property actually was just like new and it's an active status. Okay, so it actually, see, effective date July 2nd. Between July 2nd and July 28th, it's telling us that 26 days have elapsed. So you can get like more of a breakdown. Just like this one here, 128 days is the continued days on market, 29 is the days on market. If I clicked on the property history here, this little clock with like an arrow going around it, it would show me more of what happened, right? So it looks like something happened. It was a new listing when it went up in February. It was canceled in April, right? It was put up on the market again halfway through May. So in this case, if I'm seeing these numbers right, only 45 days or so went by, not 60, before it was relisted. It was canceled again, another 45 days later, I guess, right? And the same process continued. So you can kind of start to understand what the CDOM is trying to tell you. This property was canceled and relisted. You can get a better idea of what it's referring to. Always good to kind of go in there and have a look, though, because we wouldn't have known that, right? That it was even off the market for 45 days in the first place, right? But you can get a really good idea there. So at this point, final topic that we wanted to jump into is really the idea of saving your searches, okay? Because as we have in the recent searches, there's also a very effective tool that you can use when you save your search. Something that maybe I want this search here. It really met our, the criteria that we had for our client. It's specific to the map. It's specific to the criteria we chose and the price range. But maybe I want to run this search a couple days from now. And at that point, I'm going to want to know if any new ones have come in, right? Maybe when I run the search in 5 days, it's not 13, it's, 15. Some of them might have changed status to sold. Some of them might be new active ones. Some of them might have been canceled and relisted. Whatever the case may be, I need to be able to differentiate between these 13 and what happened in the last couple of days, for example. Well, you can do that if you save the search a certain way. Okay, and I'll show you that now. So aside from all the information and what you could see about your listings, okay, we know that we could just click on the certain MLS number, get a little bit further in and track down the information of the individual properties. When you're doing something to the entire list, such as the save feature here, right? Well, we can save this as a new saved search, right? You're going to see saved search, auto email, speed bar, shortcut. Well, saving it as a new saved search is where you're going to find that really effective feature. Okay, if I click on this now, it's going to ask me to name it. Okay, so perhaps my client in this case was Brian, our IT manager. I'll just use his name as an example. So Brian's search criteria, how about that? Okay, we went map plus price, let's say. We didn't specify too much, right? It was just things like freehold, sale, right? Very general. We only selected about 4 things, including the price range. Maybe I'll just do a little description, but I know that if I click on this, it's for Brian G's search criteria, right? I can assign this to a contact if I want, right? I can create a contact for Brian. That way I can manage it a little bit better. The really, really important part when you're saving a search, okay, and if you're using it for this way, and I'll show you why in a moment, is enabling it as a favorite search on the Home tab. Okay, this means that we have a widget that we're going to bring into play here. If you remember the widgets we were moving around on our dashboard earlier. Well, I can only have a maximum of 10, so it's going to be important that I manage these a certain way. Okay, but if I enable this as a favorite search, I'll show you in a second what that does. Right, I can hit save, it'll save the search. Just want to point out this criteria first, okay? It will give us a summary of what is going to be included here. So it's going to be residential, active status, only freehold, sale. This is our drawing on the map relative to a latitude, longitude, and our price range. So anything that meets this criteria is going to come up in our search, right? Things may change in a couple days. Maybe there's 15 when we run this search on Friday. Well, let's hit save and see where it went, right? Created a saved search. That's our title for it, right? Let's track that one down because we'd expect there to be 13 listings in it, for example. Well, right now we have a pretty, simplified dashboard. We've closed everything out and it all went into our additional tab. the one I'm looking for is my favorite searches. This one here. If I just drag this out, let's drop that over here, well, you'll be able to see all of the favorite searches that I've created in the past. It looks like I've used Brian as an example previously for Glen Abbey. Well, in this case, the one that we just selected was Brian G's search criteria with map and price, right? Silly names that I've put for these other ones, right? Husband and wife, bungalow with INRIX, right? Different general examples. This was an INRIX drive time one that I was doing as a test. Well, the option that you have, and this is unique to only the favorite search tab, right? If I click update all, what it will actually do is it will tell me how many or it'll indicate any kind of change that happened since the last time I ran this search, right? I can either click right on Brian G's search, which will give me 13, or I could click on this little option here where it says 0 new, and understandably there should be no new ones, right? We just ran the search. This would give me 13, this would give me 0, because it's just showing me the change between the last time that I ran the search. Brian G's Glen Abbey one up here, right? Maybe this gives us like 50 listings. Okay, 36 listings, for example. Well, who knows when's the last time that I ran that search? There's 33 new ones, however. Okay, so it must have been a long time ago because there's only 3 that were in there previously, and there's 33 brand new ones. Well, I can look at just the 33 new ones if I'd like. Okay, that's where it's really important. If you save it as a new favorite search, that's the only place you get this feature where this Brian G's search criteria one, well, on Friday, if I go to my favorite searches and I hit update all, right, I might see a 1, a 2, a 3, I might see some listings in here, but it's going to be very hard to tell which ones are in fact the new ones unless I just click right on that section, right? I can't click it because there's none, but if I clicked right on this one here for concession 12, if I clicked on that, it would only show me the 3 new ones. When have I emailed it? I've never emailed it before, for example, right? It's only going to show me these new listings that I haven't had a chance to look at just yet. They're totally new. They weren't in my search previously, right? If I click on this, I would expect to see 13. It's the one we just saved. But on Friday, when I click on it, there might be 16. And if there are 16, it would say 3 new right here when I hit update all. Okay, that is a big difference between, and if you'll see here in your My Matrix, a lot of your stuff gets saved here. You do have a saved searches section. So I have a whole lot of different saved searches that I've run, all right? But only the ones that are selected as my favorites are the ones that are on the front widget and have access to the update all button, okay? Like this one here, right? We created this one today. It is also a favorite. If we go into the settings, we would see that it is checked off as a favorite, and we can absolutely see it on our front page here. I thought I could select it, but it's just this second one here. Okay, so really, really important there. As far as everything that intended to kind of go over for this session, as you know, it was meant to be a very introductory approach to Matrix, went over some features to bring us all the way from getting into Matrix for the first time, editing and working on your profile information, the things that you can share publicly as regards to your profile, and then we jumped right into searches, and then finally customizing the listing displays and saving the searches. Okay, so really kind of brings together all the topics that I had planned for today. What I would like to do at this point, as I mentioned, I do want to do a really brief introduction to It's So Real Estate. Okay, so this is the on-regional system, right? onregional.ca. This is where you access Matrix. Well, the place where we will be accessing Matrix once it's completed, okay, is currently called It's So Real Estate. And you may have started getting some some notifications about that. I definitely want to take a little bit of time here to show you some comparisons, especially the stuff that we covered in the session today. I'll show you a few of those and what they look like on the new system. We don't have a set date yet. Ordis hasn't reached out and said, hey, we're going to be going live with the new system in December, let's say. They haven't reached out and mentioned anything like that. So for right now, it is just a beta. It's a testing environment, but you can go to itsorealestate.ca here. Let me close that. It looked like it might have gone to .com. itsorealestate.ca. Okay, if I was to just go to this website here, itsorealestate.ca. If we let that load, give it a minute. Aha, that's what's going on. It looks like it kept my login credentials because I did log into it earlier. Maybe I have it open on a different tab. Let me log out so I can show you. All right, perfect. So this is what it looks like when you go to itsorealestate.ca. Okay, you see it here on screen in this image. This is the website right now. If you are interested in going in, having a look at the new system, well, you can see the test environment that they've created. Okay, things to note is you can't currently input a listing on this system. You can't do some advanced features like auto emails or things like that. However, there are some very, very cool features that you can get familiar with, especially some stuff that we did today, just like running searches, right? Because the new system is very, very similar. Okay, if I was to use my OMID and password, and just log in here, show you a little bit of what it looks like. Same thing, goes through Clarity, right? I can click on the ITSO matrix here to take us to that application. And we would, so I'll let that load. In the meantime, I'm actually gonna just type ITSO Real Estate in the chat. So testing new system. There we go. So I just threw it in the chat so everybody can see the new system or the new test site is itsorealestate.ca. Let me zoom in a little bit here and I'll show you. Well, first off, right, some of the stuff that we talked about, even to use this as a bit of a review as well, is, well, right, the news and alerts is pinned to the top left, cannot move it. The rest of the stuff is the widgets that you can move around. We still have things like the external links, right? There's still an additional tab. So if I close out some of these, they go into the additional where they should. So very, very comparable there as far as when you land on this screen. We still have the Oakville Milton District Real Estate Board top left, right? So already very comparable. We are seeing this message right at the top. It's a beta testing environment only, right? So, but you can search for listings in here. And that's what I want to show you really briefly here. So if we were to search for something like a residential search, maybe the first thing to note is these titles have changed a tiny bit, right? I can either do a residential sale by clicking on residential, or I can actually specify lease right here instead of 2 steps from now, for example, right? It's going to do the same for commercial. So these 2 topics, which are the more common ones for leases, well, you can actually do searches that'll be more specific to leases by clicking on the lease one, okay? So if I go, maybe for this, I will go in between the tabs. Zoom in a bit more to make it more comparable. There we go. So these hopefully are kind of the same size now. And if I search or just hover the search, well, you'll see that when I hover it in here, it's just residential or commercial, right? Only thing that seems to be really different here is just there is an additional lease one where you can be more specific, okay? But let's just make our way to residential. We'll have a look at how things look on this screen. Okay, same thing over here, residential. All right, so right off the bat, as we compare the two, already looking extremely similar, right? Maybe a couple things to note is just, well, the image is a bit different. Maybe it's just a little bit more streamlined. They try to make it look a bit more modern, right? Okay, different colors, but the criteria is consistent. It looks very, very similar. We have our statuses, we have our list price, right? Very, very similar in that respect. Same as the matrix system that we're currently working on. As you see here, right? The search, sorry, the criteria, the map, and the results, right? Just seeing different icons pop up next to them. One thing to point out absolutely on this screen is we do have a bit of a difference when it comes to conditional statuses. Okay, so this was from just user input, right? Active CS, active NS. When you saw me introducing those earlier in the session, right? They can be a little bit awkward at first. Maybe they, right? ACS and ANS maybe aren't described in the best kind of way. Well, what's going on here is they actually amalgamated those into one category, tried to simplify it a bit. Instead of using active continuing to show and active no longer showing, they've been put together into one easier to look at category just called conditional. Okay, and you'll be able to go through and look at them a little bit better in the later steps, right? If I go to results and I'm looking at my conditional statuses, well, I'll be able to see if it's, continuing to show or do not show, right? So I can specify them more specifically here, rather than the short form that might not be so obvious at first. Okay, so just to kind of make things a little more user-friendly, they did change that a little bit. But we'll just stick to active. Still working with the same type of stuff, right? We have our kind of freehold information. We already know that we're working with a residential sale because we chose that one rather than choosing the residential lease, for example, which might show a little bit different, right? So we have our residential lease compared to our residential sale. We can also approach, okay, we can actually approach the search the exact same way if we were looking to start with the map tab. Okay, still really, really important here, however, is making note that the new system, okay, so this new It's a Real Estate system is in fact bringing in the entire Ontario collective. Okay, so I find myself actually using this system from time to time right now, even though it's a beta system and it's just for testing. Well, maybe I want to find a property in Kawartha Lakes. Well, I can actually look at that on this system because it's amalgamating the entire Ontario collective, whereby you may have gone to like an intra matrix to see that listing information. Well, you can see it right away. It's going to show us a whole lot more information, right? Not only the stuff in our region that we're used to, just like how we were able to see Kitchener and Waterloo and all that. Well, right on the base system, you can actually see all this collective as well, which I think is very, very cool. Kind of a big step towards a provincial system, right? For data access. Well, here we have Oakville, but same thing's consistent, right? We're seeing our drawing tools, our layers icon, the things are still here. We're still getting a whole lot of listings because we didn't zero out our price, but we could recreate the exact same type of thing, right? Go to our criteria, zero out our price, jump back to the map tab. Okay, we can draw maybe a specific area, right? In this case, maybe we want to go with an area more closer to the Navy Street location. All of our icons are there. They might look a tiny bit different, right? In Rick's Drive Time, our drawing tools, our layers icon. It's all going to be very, very comparable here. Okay, maybe our client in this case wanted us to specify the old Oakville and the central Oakville location, okay, which is going to be these two drawings here. Just because I'm so zoomed in, it's kind of hard to see this map, so I'll just do it from here, and maybe I want to just draw this polygon. Right? So they want central Oakville and old Oakville included. Right? We draw those out. We can deactivate our neighborhood tab. Okay, we all know the next step, going back to our criteria, taking away the price, and right back at the map, we can start to work from here. Okay, same thing's going to happen as before. Now when you hover over them, they may display a tiny bit more information. As you can see, they are actually listing bed and bath counts where when we were on the previous system, when we hovered over a little icon, a little listing, well, it may not have given us as much of an insight. Okay, so a bit of extra info that you can see right away there. Okay, and of course, if we went to our criteria, we can break down the same kind of thing. So just active, right? Maybe we just want freehold, and maybe we want a price range, something similar to what we had earlier. Maybe I'll go 1.3 to 1.8. Jump back to the map. We're left with 8 results in this area. So a bit different area. I kept a larger range just based on what I was seeing in the area. And maybe this relates to our client and we can move on to the next step. Okay. Just really, really important to note, however, right? Listing displays, we can see some more information here. Okay. Really important to note that maybe not every feature is currently available. It is a testing site. So I can tell right away when I go to save, well, I can save the search, but if you notice, one that's missing here is auto email, for example, right? Auto email is not set up on this system just yet, so bear that in mind when you go to use it. But still, really, really interesting stuff to get familiar with. It looks like we have a new column here even that specifies waterfront properties. So this $1.5 million listing that kind of landed on Trafalgar Road apparently has some waterfront details, right? So extra information. The new system is bringing in some very, very cool features. I would absolutely suggest that when you have the chance, head over to itsorealestate.ca, make your way there, and you can start to kind of look at some of those things. So as you saw here, I really did kind of just go over some of those things that we worked on, from looking at the widgets to saving our search, for example, but the same thing is going to come into play, right? Brian's new search near 125 Navy, for example. Okay, and maybe I'll just save it as a regular search and have it saved on there, right? Same thing. If we go to our home tab, we look at our recent searches. We have access to our recent searches. There is a speed bar toolbar. It's made like a lot more apparent on the front screen so you could see it better, because this one's very commonly overlooked, right? You can really see this one. Okay, so again, very, very similar stuff. I find that they streamlined it. They made it look really, really nice. It's very, like, the user interface is really, really nice to navigate through. But I would definitely suggest jumping on there. Even if you're a little bit newer and you're just getting used to this one for the first time, maybe run some comparisons on this one. I find that, especially if I'm looking for a property up north or something, or I just want to like look at the different areas and how they came into play with the new agreements. Well, very, very cool stuff that you can check out at a glance here. Okay. So what I'm going to leave with you as a final little bit of information, if you've been in a session previously, you'll know that I always like to show you where you can go if you're looking for this recorded session, because it is something that's being recorded right now. It may take a little while for just our events department to kind of get it through events and communications before it's kind of put through to the website, but we are intending to upload it to the video training bank. So I'll show you where that is. If you remember from when we used our external links, we went to our members area when we made changes to the profile information. Well, there's a whole lot more information going on over there. If you click on that, and I'll zoom in a tiny bit more, right? In this members area on OMDREB.ca, you can also make your way down towards the bottom here. It's about 2/3 of the way down. The video training bank. This one is going to be one of our OMDREB training webinars. Here's where you could see the previous rotation that we had, all of the topics, including the web forms and stuff like that. Well, this session will be posted to the video training bank within the next few days as it gets edited and completed, but you will be able to kind of look at it and jump through to the section that might be most relevant for you. Okay, so do keep an eye out for that if that interests you. And if you haven't seen this video training bank just yet, definitely make your way over. There are some very awesome professional development ones that our events department have set up. The ones where the keynote speakers gives us approval that we can record it, and upload it, right? These are the ones that, like, if there's a topic here that interests you, right? This is something new that started since kind of COVID hit. With everything being a webinar, we've been recording them, posting them to the website. Maybe you want to see, right, 3 ways to virtually promote your business without selling. Well, you can click on this, you can watch the video. Maybe this was a webinar that happened just a couple weeks ago. You could still watch it at your own leisure, much like how I'll upload the one from today.